Good afternoon. I'll call to order the Monday, July 16, 2018 Public Works, Finance, and Safety Committee meeting. The first item on the agenda is approval of the consent agenda. Got a motion by Y, second by Manti. We're doing everybody. Is there any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. The next item on the agenda is public input, and this is the time for any citizen to come up, and if you have something to say, you're welcome to come up and approach the microphone. Make sure the green light is on the microphone and state your name.
My name is Doug Reese. I live at 2803 Fifth Avenue Northwest.
Hold on.
Okay.
Okay. My name is Doug Reese. I live at 2803 Fifth Avenue Northwest in the Herzog Edition out by the airport. I've been conversing with Dan, and I've gotten a letter from the mayor in regards to a sidewalk in my area. And I'll first of all explain. If you have any questions, just stop me. In 1993, myself and my neighbor built new homes at Derby Downs. At the time, at the corner of 28th Street and 5th Avenue Northwest, there is a grassy lot or area that goes up to the park there. Okay. When we built the house, being as we were on a corner lot and my neighbor was on a corner lot, we were advised, of course, that we had to put in sidewalks, which we did on the front to the south of my residence. On the east side, where the street area was plotted, there was to be no street installed there, and to this day there still has not. City Hall came, or Darwin Brinkman at the time came to us and said, would you possibly decide to each pay for half the sidewalk, and we'll put an extra wide sidewalk up to the park. So myself and my neighbor agreed to that. We each paid for half that sidewalk, and they ran it right straight up to the park. And that's where it is today. There was a portion of sidewalk that went from my property line over to the driveway of my neighbor, which is actually part of the sidewalk as well. I don't know who the city had put that in there. The city paid for it. That was the agreement. Yeah, it'd probably be best to show. Whoever the city hired to put it in had absolutely no idea what they were doing. They put in this probably 40, 50-foot stretch of concrete. They didn't compact it underneath. They didn't cut it for cracks. They didn't edge it. They came in, they threw down some 2x4s, poured the concrete, and left. Never screeded it. It's terrible. Since that time, every time it rains, the water stays on that sidewalk. It runs towards my neighbor's driveway, and it is now washed out under his driveway and caused his portion of the sidewalk and driveway to actually collapse. And I have photos of it if anybody would like to see it. The portion in question is from the yellow line to that sidewalk, which is, like I said, basically where the street would run if there was going to be a street. Had I installed that concrete, we would have used the same contractor that I used, and we haven't had one ounce of problems whatsoever with my concrete. It's just that portion on that curve that's absolutely broken up, and it's becoming a hazard because it's now, that concrete has dropped down. My neighbor's beating the fact that it broke has now popped up, and that sidewalk gets used a lot for that park. What's going to happen eventually if somebody's going to hook a foot or somebody's going to hit that with a bicycle and they're going to crash? I was advised by City Hall that it's my responsibility to replace that piece of concrete because it's supposedly part of the boulevard. Well, I disagree. I never put that concrete in there to begin with. That was the city's agreement to put that piece of concrete in there. It is not on my property. It is not on my boulevard. It does run up to a sidewalk that myself and Mr. Brecky installed, but that was only to benefit the city to run that sidewalk up the middle. Otherwise, we'd have had two sidewalks and then a blank spot in the middle. So my question is, you know, we would like to have the city replace that portion of sidewalk. I did have a estimate from Vern Mosier, who is a cement contractor. He advised me to replace that portion of cement on that curve would be $650. And that's labor, material. And then to repair Mr. Brecky's driveway was $550. And the reason that collapsed is because that concrete washed out underneath that portion of sidewalk at the end of where the problem lies is right where the driveway and that sidewalk meet. That's where the split has been. And it's raised up, and basically that concrete that was installed by the city has just fallen apart. It was never split, cracked, or anything.
Doug, you're
Yes.
not talking about the one that goes way up.
No, Mike,
You're just talking about just the
that
curve.
little curve part right there where the hand is showing. You see where the property
Okay.
line is there?
Yep.
From that over to Mr. Brecky's driveway is the portion that I'm asking to be replaced. The other part is just fine. There's no problem with that. But once you hit my property line from there over to that sidewalk, it's shot. And then, like I said, it caused, they said it would be $550 to fix his driveway and $650 to fix that concrete. And then it would be done right, and I don't think there'd ever be another problem. Like I said, whoever did it didn't know what they were doing to begin with. There can't be any base underneath that concrete because when it rains, it stays wet for 3 or 4 days after it rains. So that's my input. I would like to see the city replace that. I do feel that we are not responsible for that because we didn't put it in there to begin with, and it's not on my property. It is on city property. If the city was willing to vacate that piece of property from the property line to the center of that sidewalk, I would be all for that as well. Then I would replace the sidewalk because then it would be my property. You know, that's one option that I would agree with. Yes.
Just out of curiosity, Doug, who mows the lawn all the way up to the sidewalk? Do you and Brecky
For
both?
many years, the city mowed my portion and Mr. Brecky's portion. For many years, that was the agreement between Park and Rec. They come in and put those trees up alongside the sidewalk that the city put those in, and Park and Rec maintained that until the last couple of years. I've been mowing it and spraying it because it would get so bad with dandelions I couldn't keep them out of my yard. We had not been cleaning that sidewalk because we thought the city was going to clean it because to me it's a city sidewalk because it's on city property. Well, I was also advised now by the letter I got that if we don't plow that snow, we may be cited for not plowing that snow. This winter I did plow it. I plowed it myself. So
the agreement between the park, just out of curiosity, between the Park and Rec and you, just stopped, or I mean, there was no agreement that we're not going to do it?
There wasn't really any written agreement or anything. It was just between, I think it was Roger Adams at the time. He said you can kind of use that as your side yard, but you don't really own it. But you can't put anything on it, but you can mow it and you can play on it or do whatever you want to on it. So, like I said, the last couple of years here, I've been maintaining it. Mr. Brecky's been mowing it for years up to the sidewalk. In fact, I even mow back around behind the trees and even in there because half the time that doesn't get mowed properly. But like I said, we did pay for that sidewalk going up to the park. And it's fine. It's just that one curvature part that's really bad there, and it's getting worse by the day. You can't even really, even when you run a snowblower over it, you hit the concrete and it's busted up and it's lifting, and so.
Yes. Councilman Roby?
Yes.
What year was the sidewalk put in, and do we know who the contractor was?
It was put in 1993, in the spring of 93. That's when I moved in the house. When I moved in, there was no concrete in there yet. Gary Helland built the house for us. He contracted the concrete work done in my driveway and my sidewalks. And those same contractor, whoever that was I can't remember who the guy that built my house now. I don't know who he used as a contractor, but he did not put that portion in. The city hired someone to put that portion of concrete in, and I have no idea who it was. But they didn't know what they were doing.
Councilman Vilhauer?
Doug or Mayor or Matt, what was the overall gist of the letter that you received?
The letter that I received, was that concrete sidewalks should be constructed along each side. I can read you this. It's like 3 pages long. It's basically citing the ordinances, stating that it's my responsibility to repair that, and I don't believe it is. You know, if we wanted to cut hairs, I took pictures of probably a dozen places up in Herzog Edition that do not have any sidewalks. They've never been installed. There's curb and gutter, and there's no sidewalks installed.
Generally, the city doesn't install sidewalks. It's the responsibility of the adjacent property owner to install the sidewalks.
But
and
isn't it
didn't realize
city policy though that there are sidewalks to be installed?
Sidewalks are required to be installed in every street.
There's a lot of them that
we
are
have
not.
a lot that aren't. That we had a lot of years where the city just didn't make people do that for whatever reason, but we have the ability to order them in at any time according to state law.
I paid for mine. I don't understand why those other property owners up there don't have to pay for theirs. I'm not going to be very popular with people up there because I brought this up, but I paid for curb and gutter, and now I'm being told I got to pay for this concrete when there's no other. I could show you pictures for a half an hour there where there's no sidewalks installed up there. And that's not fair as far as I'm concerned. You know, to me, that's pick and choose. But, you know, all I'm asking is that concrete be repaired, and Mr. Brecky's driveway is, you know, I don't know what we're going to do with that either. You know, that's caused because of the bad concrete that was poured. So we're talking $1,100 or $1,200 to make this problem go away.
I did look up when you had contacted me earlier. I looked up his building permit, and the sidewalk was required. And that north-south sidewalk was required on his building permit to be shared by both sides. And the road was not required, but that is a road right-of-way. And Boulevard is that portion of the road right-of-way, which is not being used as a road, which would mean the entire right-of-way right there. Sidewalks belong in boulevards. They don't go on private property. And it's the adjacent property owner that's responsible for the maintenance of sidewalks, according to our ordinance. So
that's under normal circumstances. This is an exemption here because that sidewalk was put up the middle.
So that there wouldn't, why have two sidewalks?
That's exactly why it was done.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's why it was done, and we agreed to that. But that other portion of the sidewalk, we didn't install that. I don't know who did, but like I said, they had no clue what they were doing.
Councilwoman Manchin?
Is that entire sidewalk going straight up, is that all on city property?
Yes, it's all not city property. It's public right-of-way, which is different.
Right.
It's not privately held land owned by the city. It is public right-of-way.
Is that part of the
Platted.
agreement from the whole development?
No, the whole development did not happen at the same time. It was platted, and then it took years. Sidewalks generally go in with the construction of a house, and you have to normally abut a public road in order to get a building permit to build the house. And you see that one house does not abut any road that's improved. Its driveway goes down the public right-of-way. They were not required to build a road adjacent to their house to have a road that just served one house. So it is a unique situation in that the road was not required to be installed, but the sidewalk was. And the sidewalk is shown on the building permit for that house that's on the east side of the sidewalk, which I don't think is Mr. Reese's house. I think it's someone else's.
Yeah, that's correct. Mine's on the west side.
And I don't have a copy of that with me, but it says right there on the building permit that the sidewalk has to be constructed, and I think that property owner did it instead of building a road, and it says on there that the two property owners will share the maintenance of it. And that's, you know, they were trying to save some money for the taxpayers that lived there, not requiring them to build a road, not requiring them to build two parallel sidewalks on either side of a grassy boulevard. So money was saved. There's less infrastructure than could have been required by strict adherence to the ordinance. But the function is retained because that public right-of-way is being used as a public thoroughfare for pedestrians. And it does get used. And is it necessary in the winter to remove snow there? Well, that's probably debatable, but technically, yes, it's supposed to be snow removed during the winter, like all other sidewalks in our
City owned
community.
as well?
The city, yes, the city
Okay.
removes the snow on the sidewalks that are adjacent to city-owned private property.
Wrong.
That's
Not
not
up,
public
not where I
right of way.
live, they
Like-
don't. You go
No.
down west of me, there's another park down about 2.5, 3 blocks west of me. There is a city-owned sidewalk that goes down past that little park, and that has not ever once been shoveled. Not once.
Well, and that would be the city responsibility, and so I've never heard a complaint about that.
One of the main reasons that Mr. Brecky's driveway cracked was because the city park and rec trucks drive up and down that sidewalk to do maintenance on the park up there. We've seen them do it 20 times. The white Ford pickups, they drive up and down that sidewalk.
Okay, anybody
So-
else have a comment before Mr. Reese leaves? Councilman Albertson?
What is the resolve for this? If the city put that sidewalk in and didn't do an adequate job, is that reason to replace it? I
Well,
mean, should we replace something that?
yes,
we
but our
didn't do?
ordinance does say that it's the adjacent property owner responsibility to build the sidewalk. If the taxpayers built it for the adjacent property owner, that's one expense that the taxpayers have already made that maybe wasn't right.
Yeah.
But to follow it up forever, to be responsible forever for it because they got that one-time bonus of not having to pay for it themselves, how fair is that? I guess that's, if the council wants to make an exception to our ordinance, they can. It's the council's responsible for the ordinances. And only the council can change the ordinances.
And they paid for the one going north, right?
I don't know who paid for it. I know-
Myself and
Doug said
Mr.
they
Brecky paid full price for that sidewalk going up the middle, and it's an extra wide sidewalk.
I had been out there, and that sidewalk that he's talking about really is a dangerous thing. And so if somebody gets hurt there and you say, well, it's their fault, but it's on city property. you
It's
know,
not city property per se, it's a public right-of-way. And all sidewalks are in public right-of-way. That's normal. The sidewalk belongs in the public right-of-way, and it is the adjacent property owner by ordinance that's responsible for the upkeep of it. And if we learn that that sidewalk is in disrepair, we have some responsibility to order it to be fixed by the adjacent property owner. So technically, he's brought it to our
Good luck with
attention.
that.
It's what we normally do when we find out that we write them a letter that says it's come to our attention.
Mayor, how can you require me by law to do that and then come after me legally to fix that sidewalk when you've got all these other properties up there that have never been required to put their sidewalks in by city ordinance? Explain that one to me, how that's fair. I really hope you do.
Generally, we haven't ordered sidewalks in or repaired unless someone else has brought it to
You got it.
the city's attention, but we have. We have ordered sidewalks in,
Well-
and the adjacent property owners have paid for their installation and their upkeep and repair, and
How
the
about-
snow removal.
How about 27th Street down to Golf Course Road, coming up from the new fire hall? That street has never been brought up to city code. There's no curb and gutters. It's a single wide road coming up there.
And-
I was told the reason that the city hasn't put a street in there and curb and gutters is because the landowners on both sides would have to pay for that,
That's true.
which I did.
That is
I
true.
had to pay for that myself when I had mine put in. So did everybody else up there.
And the city has the power to order sidewalks and roads built per city specifications to anyone
So
that owns property and
when
make them
can I
pay for it.
expect
But
that
we,
road to be put in
we
then?
don't generally do that because it creates a hardship for people. And I mean, if you want us to do that, that's your prerogative as a taxpayer to request that of the council, and it's their choice whether or not they would choose to order that in.
Well,
And I would hope they would want to see the necessity, not just do it because someone else had to do it, but to do it because it's needed. And
a normal two-lane road going up there coming from the fire hall is not a necessity. Have you ever driven up there and met another car? You have to pull over on the grass to get through. I'm done.
Well, thank you.
Went
I know you're
exactly as I
frustrated, but
expected.
is there anyone else that would like to? That's okay.
Mayor, I'd like to make a comment on that. It seemed like we jumped around to a lot of different issues here, but I'd like to get back to the little curved part of the sidewalk here. If the city had that done for whatever the reason, and it wasn't done properly, in my opinion, we should fix that problem.
That was 1993.
I don't care.
I don't know that it wasn't. I mean,
Well, I'm just saying, from what I
lots
hear,
of sidewalks that have gone in that have failed in the last 20 or 30 years.
I understand, but what I'm saying, I said if the city put that in and it wasn't done correctly,
How
I
are you
think
going to know that?
well, Mayor, I don't know that. I don't know what records we have or don't have. I don't know that.
I can almost guarantee we have no record of compaction and materials used to create that sidewalk, nor can we ever even prove who built it or why. Generally, it's the property owner that builds it.
Are these, excuse me.
Councilman Alverson.
If we must be able to find, though, that if that was built at the same time as that, both those property owners, if that was built at the same time, I can tell you, having walked out there, that the sidewalk going north, the sidewalk going west, and the sidewalk going east are really in good shape. And then there's this piece. It's like if you cut this little deal right here in half, just cut this in half, and then part of it is absolutely perfect, and part of it looks like I put it in. I mean, it really is a shambles.
Even
And-
so, it's going to be impossible
But if
for
we
us
did
to
it-
prove that who put it in. I can almost guarantee we do not have those records.
Yeah, but we probably know.
I mean,
that
we can
put it in.
definitely look. We
Yeah.
can look in the files and see what we can find on it. I can promise we'll find anything, but we will look.
I'm agreeing with Mike that if somebody gets hurt out there, and it goes back to that the city knew that this was a
Well,
shambles.
we
and
have
did
an
it.
obligation to order it repaired. That's where our obligation lies.
Or to fix it.
And we've order it to be fixed. And we've done that on many occasions.
Mayor.
When we learn of sidewalk in disrepair, someone gets a letter that says, we've learned your sidewalk's in disrepair and it's your responsibility to fix it. And it seems really harsh and mean, but that's what we do.
I do have a question. The sidewalk to the park, was obviously a requirement by the city that they build that sidewalk? They both shared in half and half of that
Yes, rather
sidewalk.
than put two sidewalks,
Yep.
one on each side of the right-of-way, they allowed them just to have one and share it. That's on the building permit. I've seen that with my eyes.
If the park wasn't there, would we have still required that, do you think?
Well, the right-of-way is necessary because it is the way that we access a public park. That's the way the public gets to the public park. And rights-of-way are not just for cars. Rights-of-way are for people, whether they're on a bike or a car or on foot. Rights-of-way are owned by the public and maintained by property owners adjacent. Those are corner lots. And that's, they weren't required to have a road there, but they were required to have a sidewalk because there's a park. So, we can start taking over maintenance of those if you'd like, but this isn't the only one. Be prepared for a very long laundry list and a change in policy. This isn't how we've done business. And we get this request constantly, snow removal. Like when we do a street project and the sidewalk goes in, people, since we put it in, they think we should remove the snow. I never even wanted that sidewalk. Why should I have to remove the snow? Why should I have to fix it? I don't even want it. It's not for the adjacent property owners necessarily. It's for the public. And the public, this is how we pay for it in our community. Our regulations specify that the adjacent property owners will pay for the sidewalk adjacent to their property in the public right-of-way. And, if you want to change that, we can.
I would say I think we need to get somebody that, with some engineering expertise, that can look at this section, because if it was put in substandard and it did cause these issues, I'm sure somebody could probably tell it, even though it's a 25-year-old sidewalk.
Yeah, and
But that's part of that assessment, I think. I think that if it was put in substandardly, I think that makes a difference on what direction we go with this thing.
Kind of piggybacking on Dan and Mike and kind of what I was listening to you say. So the idea of possibly repairing this area, I don't know if you want to call it good faith, goodwill, kindness of our heart. Are we going down a slippery slope then, or are we?
I think so. I think so because we have sidewalks that we've discovered were in disrepair, and we've ordered people to fix it. And now on this case, if we suddenly change that policy and start repairing it because, well, we're not sure, but we think we might have installed it. Sidewalks, things happen over time, ground settles, whatever. And sidewalks collapse and they need to be fixed. Sometimes roots push them up.
Yeah.
We have not, as a general rule, gone through there as a community and fixed sidewalks. Unless we're fixing it for ADA, which is a change in regulation, we repair sidewalks in that manner because the regulations changed. It was installed by whoever, and now the rules are different, and we're bringing it up to current regulations. This is not the case here. This is a case of maintenance.
Mayor.
Yes.
I know you've explained our ordinance quite clearly to us, but when did that, and I guess, do you know, or Dan, do you know, we should ask Mr. Reese, when did that section of sidewalk start to break up? I mean, it didn't happen
He didn't
overnight.
say,
Do we know?
I don't know. I mean, I would think that if it's been bothering him for 25 years.
Well, I didn't hear him say that necessarily. So I guess I'd be interested to know, too, how long it's been that way, because I think, too, that if that north-south stretch of sidewalk is in great shape, I mean, he's got a valid argument, in my opinion, then, for this stretch that is apparently been a problem. Now, if it happened overnight within the last year or two, well, yeah, 25 years is a long time. You can't expect to last forever, but I guess I'd be interested in how long there has been a problem with that stretch.
Yeah, if all the adjacent sidewalk is in good shape and was built around the same time, that's obviously.
What if it really was installed by the same contractor that installed the rest of it, and it was installed by private people? Does that make a difference in your mind as who should fix it?
Well, to me, that's why I'd be curious to know when this started to break up, because I think that's a factor in our decision too.
Okay, well, we'll do some research on
Yeah,
that.
I think, has anybody from the city, Colin, if you went out there and looked at it, or somebody looked at it to see if there is a noticeable difference in what would appear to be workmanship or the install of this?
I personally haven't gone out there. I think Kelly may have.
Councilwoman Manti?
Yeah, I can comment to that. It is noticeably different, and it is a very unwalkable or difficult walkable subdivision in general because of the change in the sidewalks, no sidewalks. That section right there, honestly, I walk my son's dog through there. That's why I've been there. And it does not appear to be made out of anything different. It looks like the rest of the sidewalk, so I can't speak to that. I can't say, oh, it stops here and starts here, and this is different work. Do you know what I'm saying?
So the part that's bad is where? Colin, do you know where it's bad?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Am I still
You're
on? This section from
Because that
the
was
right of
probably
way
installed-
to this weird angle.
I'm guessing that might have been installed. Well, I don't know. I guess I'm not going to guess. Yeah. I don't know.
Typically, the landowner would not be responsible for a sidewalk, in this case, crossing the area of the right-of-way. Would that be correct or not?
No, that would not be correct. This is a corner lot. Corner lots have two sidewalks generally.
Okay.
One going north-south, one going
But they
east-west.
generally don't have, a normal corner goes like this, right? On both sides, and then the
Because it's
roadway
going
in
around the
between
curve.
doesn't have, the right-of-way in between generally does not have sidewalk. It's usually a road, correct? in most cases.
Well, in most cases, there would be 2 sidewalks here.
I understand,
if
but
the road were
going
approved.
across what would be the roadway or the right-of-way normally doesn't have a sidewalk because there's a road there,
Oh, okay, I see what
right?
you're saying.
That's what I'm saying.
Doug
So
came in.
probably the reason why the 2 landowners had nothing to do with the installation of this at least as they're stating, as Mr. Reese is stating. I'd like to get some input from the person that owns the other property. I wish they'd have been here today, because at some point in time, I'm just going to assume if both of those parties were in here saying, we did not install that, the city installed it, if we don't have record of that, I'm going to take their word for it. And if we installed it, I think we should repair it. And then we move on, and from here forward,
We installed
then
the sidewalk on 19th.
okay?
Should we repair all of that for all of those property owners?
No, if it was done wrong, yes.
Well, don't you
If
think
you-
you
if
would
you-
have discovered that within 5 years? if it
Don't
had
know,
been
I can't
done
tell you
wrong?
how long it's been. I'm just saying,
Can you
if
turn on the
somebody
2,000
determines
photo?
it was done wrong, then yes, I think the city should pay for it.
I think the statute of limitations is probably expired. If we're finding out that a sidewalk installed in 1993, we're learning in 2018 that it was installed improperly. That's been there a long, long time. That's 18 years ago.
I think that's why Glenn's question is, when did it start breaking up?
Right.
Was it just last year, or has it been getting, because I can only speak to the last couple of years, but has it been getting progressively worse for 12, or something like that? I
Right.
don't know.
And that's what happens. So, okay, well, I'd like to move on. We can do some research on this and report back what we find. The next item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. Is there a motion? Moved by Councilwoman Manti, second by Councilman Roby. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Item number 4 is award of contract to AP & Sons Construction for the 13th Avenue Southeast Sanitary Sewer Improvements Project, number 1821. And Colin has some information on this. This is an assessment project. So it isn't a simple matter of awarding to the low bidder, because we had an estimate, and I'll let Colin explain.
Yes. So our original estimate came in at our engineer's estimate from our staff was $99,800, and that was agreed to, and that fell within the range of the assessment paperwork. Since then, we received bids. And the low bid came in at $137,880. So it's considerably higher, 38% higher. And it's hard to judge because it's late in the season for bids. So generally we get higher bids this later in the season. But this is a very unique project as well. And all the other bids, the next was $153,000 and $186,000 roughly, so even considerably higher than the $138,000. So I did call the agent for this that's kind of been dealing with all the city work on this, and I explained to him that our estimated per foot cost was $35 to $40, and it ended up coming in at $37.50 is how we estimated it.
Wasn't it 46.60 or 40?
Well, 48.65 is what the bids came in at per lineal foot.
Right.
So about $11 higher, and that does significantly increase each individual assessment.
What was the agent's reaction? Was he wanting to withdraw?
He was trying to make it here before 4 to talk to me, but that didn't happen. I called him right before I came down again. And they do plan on coming to the council meeting here at 5:30. you know, he was questioning the bid and why it came in so high, and
You have 30 days to award the bid,
yes.
and it was open on the 5th. So we will not have another council meeting prior, right? So
Correct.
I don't know how we can award this.
Well, Mayor, if we can't get bids that are acceptable, because this is a requested item from that group of landowners, right? Couldn't we just forego it and look at it next spring again?
I think that's probably what we should do. And I would like to hear from the landowners what their intention is, but we haven't heard from them, and I can't believe that. I mean, I want to assume that they're okay paying that higher price. We're spending their money,
Yep.
and it's a significant increase in the cost. And I guess there's some big unanswered questions.
Has anybody been able, Colin, to answer to why the bids are so much higher than? I mean, I can see maybe some, but that be 38% higher. Is there?
I
Contractors
think we were
are
low
busy.
on our engineer's estimate on a couple items, and with that, it's been an extremely busy summer for most contractors, and the ones that bid on this are no different. AP and Sons was the low bidder on this one, and they're doing a lot of city work, and they're busy with their own projects as well. So it didn't surprise me to see it that high. It really didn't.
So if they're busy, they just arbitrarily raise the prices significantly?
Yes.
I
Well, and it's
mean,
not
I can
just
understand some, but
Mike.
38%, holy cow.
Well, and it is possible that they would concede that they're going to pay liquidated damages for going over their time limit, and that costs them money. So we aren't expecting them to do this out of the goodness of their heart. We'd want to reimburse them for that cost if they're willing to do it, but there's a cost when you do this
And
way.
as part of this project, and I wanted to bring this up too, we did do the chip seal on this. This was a discussion item a few months ago while Shane was still here, actually. But for this one, the chip seal amount came into $8,144.38. So that would be included in the total assessment. So that raises that cost a little bit beyond of just the work that needed to be done on 13th Avenue. It's the underground work.
That was a chance we took, and they'll probably honor it. I think that the property owners will still want to pursue making this a public road.
I've
next
talked
year.
to multiple owners along this, and they all agree that
They'd probably
it'd be
rather
beneficial.
wait and try for lower prices. We can get early bids. We've got the design done, and if this is rejected, we can rebid in the spring. So that's an option. And I wish we'd had a comment from the people who are being assessed, but without knowing, I don't know how you'd feel safe making them do that extra cost. Mike, do you want to talk about this?
What can I tell you? I had some notes on, I think. Well, I guess on this project, the cost, I can just talk about what was bid and what's missing from this lift station is why that it has to be updated. Let me find my, here it is, okay. Too many notes, but this lift station, it currently doesn't have a second pump in it, and it doesn't have all the valving and pump piping to support that pump. And the reason being is this force main has a history of freezing in winter conditions. On the deep end at the wet well, I think the wet well is about 9 foot deep. You come up to the manhole that it discharged into, it's hooked into a dead end manhole that wasn't there to received services was a dead-end manhole that was available, and that manhole is only 4 foot deep. So you know now that your pipe is coming out of the depths up into the frost line. So the lift station is missing a second pump and the related valves and piping. It does not have an electrical control panel that meets our specifications, and it doesn't have a telemetry system control panel that allows the lift station or the sewer system SCADA telemetry computer to monitor this lift station, so it can hook up to our telemetry system. So those are some of the costs, and then of course there were some concerns on where along this line all the freezing occurs. So all that piping and stuff, again, that was all taken out that pump. So every pump cycle, this thing's done, about 2 blocks worth of pipe volume flows backwards into the lift station. So that's how they stop the pipe from freezing, so it would work at all. So that's why the force main has ended up going past the current point of connection to the public sewer to a manhole that's 6'2" deep. So you're pretty much below the frost in most conditions then. So I guess that's the problems that were with the lift station, and they resulted in this bid. Why it's so different from the opinion of cost, I wouldn't know.
Yeah, I think it's not the first time we've seen this happen when we bid things out this late in the year. This isn't a surprise. Councilman Billhauer?
In looking at this, I mean, I don't understand the engineer's estimate or the bids, obviously, but I mean, do we have assurance that the engineer's estimate is in the ballpark? I mean, that could be part of our problem too.
That could be part of our problem, but if the council chooses to not award the bid, that's really the question of the day.
I understand that.
Then we can go back and revisit that, and when we rebid it, if we rebid it, we'll either revise that estimate or stay with it and say, well, you know, we think it was just the time of year. But we'll have time to revisit that.
Glenn, along your thought there, I don't know, and I'm probably Colin doesn't either, at what point we developed that opinion of cost and what it included. Originally, I think there was hope that some of the freezing conditions were due to being its proximity to a shallow storm sewer, causing it to freeze. So the original opinion or engineer's estimate may not have had the whole force main figured into.
No, it did.
Nope.
It's included.
It did?
Roger, before he retired, this was his last item before
okay.
he retired, so it was the most recent.
I didn't know that. So.
Yeah. So
Mayor?
it's just our standard procedure for estimating the cost of the work. And when you bid out late, you run the risk of getting a high bid because they're busy.
Well, Mayor, let me ask a question.
Paying overtime.
We've got a whole, I don't know how many different owners were a part of this, that agreed
Right.
to do this, but how does that work on something like this where, I mean, if I was expecting my pro rata portion of 99,000 and now it's 100 and something, 140,000, well, I'd probably be a little bit alarmed at that.
Right.
So do they all have to agree to proceed, or what
they
if
have to have 55% to
That would-
overturn it, to overturn us doing this. But Kristen, do we even have? It's gone beyond that probably. I mean, it's not within our range, so that's probably the key thing to look at. We could probably be liable for the extra cost at city taxpayers' expense if we went forward with this and they revolted. I don't know if they'd be able to overturn it completely, but we'd want to be really careful before we
Right.
would award a bid.
Well, what I was wondering is, you know, if we had all those people here and half said yes and half said no, how do we? Is it the same process
Yeah,
that
it's
you
up
use
to the
of?
council. If you're going to shove it down a few of them's throat
Yeah.
because others want you to, that's your prerogative. They all want this.
I know they want the project
this
done.
is a
but
project they all want.
what we
because
don't know if $140,000
Right, we don't
is
know
acceptable. And so does this council tonight deny the awarding, or do we approve the awarding contingent on the
can't.
body of people saying
you
yay or
can't do
nay?
that. You have 30 days to award the contract. And I guess you could probably put a contingency in there that you have a written petition from at least 55 or at least 46% I'd let Matt talk about that. If we wanted to, I've never seen that done, a contingency award of contract. And then within the next couple weeks, before the 30 days is up, we would check with the property owners,
So when's the 30 days up?
like August 3rd or 4th or something.
So we'll have our next council meeting that we could still act on
Nope,
this.
No.
the next council meeting will be the 6th.
Oh,
The
gosh.
6th, yeah. So it'll be one
That's
day.
right, we are.
Could call it, I mean, if worst comes to worst, we could call a brief special
Yeah, a
meeting
special meeting,
to award within the next 2
if
or
they
3
wanted
weeks.
to move forward. That would probably be
They-
safer.
Right.
I would just,
There will
yeah.
be multiple people here from the landowners in this area. Well, a couple of them will be here tonight to talk about it further. I don't know if they've talked to everyone or if they'll have time to do that.
And I'm not sure that we can take their word for it, per se.
I don't think we
Yeah,
can either.
I don't think you
I
can.
think we should just,
Deny it?
you have to award it. And so we could not act on it, and then if we find that the majority of the people want to move forward, which I'm guessing they don't, they'll probably, if it were me, I'd say wait till the spring and rebid it. But if the majority says, no, we don't want to take a chance, it might even be more expensive next year, then you can call a special meeting and award the contract before the 30 days have expired. But if, depending on your recommendation, I can remove this from the council agenda if you don't want to act tonight.
I would agree with that. I think
would
that's the right
also.
way to go with that. And I do think that we should look seriously at rebidding this in the spring.
I would concur.
And at the same time, understand that our engineer's estimate was correctly done.
Sure. And I would like to just ask the attorney if we can just not take action on a bid. Is that we don't have to reject or award, right?
You could just remove it from the agenda.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We will have to probably redo the resolution if we rebid it for the spring.
Right. If we don't award the bid, then the project doesn't move forward, and it won't be assessed this year anyway. So we'd, whatever, I don't know what we have to do. Kristen I don't think anything's officially filed yet because we don't have the final costs. So you maybe don't have to do anything with that. Just let it go away and then redo it next year. Probably safer, Councilman Roby?
Mike, could I ask you a question? I agree with everything that's been said here. The hesitation I always have is once a bid's open, then the guy or the gal or the company has a low bid, their numbers are on the table. But in this case, when it's that big, then I think we're warranted in doing that. So first and foremost. Secondly, are we incurring costs along the way on this? In other words, are we going to spend $25,000 fixing stuff this winter?
This is not our lift station yet. It's a private lift station. Until we upgrade it and take it over, it's not our lift station. So the lift station would sit as is, as it has it's functioned, I think, for the last, 10 years I don't know when it was built, but it'll pump some. A lot of that will flow back in the lift station. It won't freeze, but it won't be, we won't be maintaining it or responding to alarms. It's not even connected to our telemetry system, so it's still private.
Yeah, this was a request for us to take over what they built many years ago. All right, is there a motion from someone?
I'd make a motion that we remove this from the agenda, from the council agenda, and look at it again as rebidding in the spring.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second? Motion by Mantee, second by Bueller. Any further discussion?
We're going to take it off until spring, did she say, or are we going
Well,
to act on it?
we can,
I thought she said take it off until spring.
I can stop it with just take it off.
Take it off, yeah.
And then that way, if something else happens, we can do it.
yeah,
Okay.
So just take it off the agenda for tonight.
that works. Got that, Kristen? All right. We have a motion, second. Any more discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Item number 5 is consideration of change order number 2 with Dunick Inc. for the sanitary sewer replacements project number 1808 in the amount of $4,125. Colin, you want to tell us about that one?
Yes. So this is the second change order for 1808, but it is for a different roadway section. This is actually 4th Street Southeast, and the other one was for the Northwest. They're both 4th Street. We ran into a few issues along this line while installing the sanitary sewer. And this particular, I guess, difficulty that we ran into was the storm sewer. It did rain during the time they had it open, and all the joints above the sanitary sewer were leaking, so it flooded the project. And thankfully, the wastewater department was able to come out and help out pump some water out of there and the storm sewer in general. But I determined that we should fix it now. Don't leave it as is and then cover it up, and hopefully it doesn't leak, because we could physically see the leaking. So I guess they had to reconstruct just the joints, essentially, put some concrete collars on them.
All right, so kind of necessary work we didn't know we were going to have to do, but the best time to do this is when the road's torn up. So motion by Roby, second by Vilhauer. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Item number 6 is request authorization for the mayor to sign an application to place the wastewater treatment facility administration building on the state water plan. And I would, if you do make a recommendation, ask that you include the ability for me to sign all of the related documents as well. Mike, you want to tell us about this one?
Yeah. This application, as mentioned, places the wastewater treatment facility administration building project on the state water plan. This is not a loan application. It simply places the project on the state water plan, which is the first step in securing funding that will most likely be necessary for the completion of this project. As you know, we completed the wastewater treatment facility administration building space requirement evaluation earlier this year. HDR Engineering provided their recommendations to the Public Works Committee on May 16th of this year. After that, I then worked with the First District of Local Governments to assemble the application for the state water plan that's before you tonight. And at this point, we have budgeted for the design of this project to refine the costs in 2019, subject to the future approval of the City Council when they consider the budget. And we are budgeting for the construction of this project in 2020 based upon that pre-design conceptual opinion of probable construction cost. As we go through design, we'll refine the actual costs. And then right now, at a pre-design stage, there's a 25% contingency, which is about $1.2 million at this point. Till you go through design, you'll find things that you didn't consider, you'll want to consider, but a lot of that will probably be reduced. But to get a firmer cost estimate, we need to go through the design process. So given the partial collapse of this building, or the operation shop building, one portion of this project, back in June of 2017, we wanted to keep this moving. And it's our hope that with this insurance payment we're expecting in the near future for the hail damage at the wastewater facility being about $1.8 million, and given the fact that we recently retired SRF loan number 3, that loan went from 1996 to 2016. It had a principal of just under $2.6 million at 5.25% interest, with an annual debt service of about $210,000. So we've retired some debt that's built into our current rate structure. So in my mind, we want to, and we're going to need some assistance to make this project come through. But so I've looked at these numbers, and essentially, with the 25% contingency that we've got in this, because we don't have a design yet, if you actually realize that 25% contingency became real costs, our funding would need to be the approximate value of that insurance payment that the enterprise fund's about to receive for $1.8 million, and then it would involve another $2.6 million SRF loan to fund this project, which would be, again, that's already built into our rate structure based on the loan we just retired. And then we would still need to dip into cash reserves or actually take a larger loan. On the other hand, if the design comes out with a much less contingency, I mean, for example, zero, I don't think zero is realistic, but if you designed the project and the contingency went away, you took off that 1.3 million, then at that point, our insurance payment plus this $2.6 million loan that we just retired by taking another similar loan out would fund the project, all within, our current rate structure. That the debt service on that loan, that $210,000 is what we paid annually on that loan. So that's kind of where we are. Tonight it's just a state water plant application, but I wanted to.
Councilman Vilhauer?
Mike, I guess explain to me or to us, okay, the state water plan, well, okay, what does that, I mean, what are we hoping to gain by this application? What's a worst case or no case scenario?
No case scenario.
Best case or no case scenario?
I think for the project to move forward, we will need some financial assistance, and that's the first step in going after an SRF loan once we've got design complete and we have firmer cost estimates, probably still pre-bid. So you to get any funding assistance, you've got to be on that plan with this project.
Okay, so we're talking loan funding. There's not grants available out there that would.
No.
Okay.
Basically, to get a grant, there are some rules out there that you have got to charge. I believe it's a minimum of $30 for 5,000 gallons of sewage. Our rate structure, we're charging $20.53 for 5,000 gallons of sewage. So our rates are so low, we can't get a grant. And actually, in reality, when I've talked to the state about this, the people that have got grants or the communities that have got grants for wastewater projects recently have sewer fees, monthly fees more in the range of $40 to $45 a month. So any assistance to us on this project would come in the form of an additional loan. And this would be the first step. But it's not taking the loan out. It's just getting us on this plan, this list, and it would be on that list until December of 2019. By then, we would have design completed. And so the only thing we probably wouldn't have done is bid the project. So we'll have a real firm grip on how much that contingency gets reduced, how much assistance do we need in terms of financing with our cash reserves and the insurance payment that we've got coming to the enterprise fund. We're really sitting pretty good. I think it's realistic that we could get this done without impacting our rate. Although I have budgeted for a rate evaluation for the sewer enterprise fund in 2020, because in 2019, and in 2019 it'll be 15 years since the last time we did look at our rate structures. And inflation's out there, so. But I think looking at what we've got for cash reserves with the insurance money and the debt we've just retired being built into our current rate structure, I think it's very possible we can achieve this project without affecting our rate structure.
Okay, so the first step in getting a loan is to put it on the state water plan. If we were going to pay for this completely out of our own reserves, we would not need to put this on the state water plan. And there probably aren't even any other documents that go along with that. It just adds it to a list so that they can plan their money. The state has money.
Yep.
And the next step after that would be applying for a loan.
Correct. Yep.
And that'll be with new revised numbers.
Yes. We plan on completing design next year, because if we have to defer the project, we can dust off a design a year or two later at not a great effort and proceed at that point. But we really need to refine the cost and really define the project, because this is it's a conceptual layout. I know the engineers that gave us that cost, they take their design layout and they compare it. They get data out of this RS Means. It's North America's leading construction cost database, and they take a look at similar projects of this type of construction. And so they got a pretty good ballpark at where we're going to be, but we really need to get through the design.
It is still a ballpark.
Yes, it is.
25%.
Well, 25% contingency is a pretty big
Right.
number, and I'm pretty sure that number will be reduced to some extent. I don't think it'll be zero, but
Right. No. Any other questions or comments? Councilman Roby?
Are there any other reasons to be on the state water plan, and does it bring other restrictions with it?
I'm not aware of other restrictions with it. You have to be on it to get the loan. And so we want to just get on now and start to refine the design. So
what does a state water plan do? What is its genesis?
to my knowledge, I know that to get a grant or to get a loan, to get some financial assistance, you must be on it.
It gives the state information that they can use in planning the revolving fund dollars and who's going to be looking for money in the future and what they need to set aside and have available. Councilman Vilhauer?
Mike, are those loans typically the terms more beneficial than other financing sources?
Yeah, I think the loan we just retired, the interest rate on the loan, the financing alone was like 3.9%. I think they might be a little bit lower than that now. And then there's another small percentage, like in this previous loan that we retired was about 1.25%, was for, goes back to the state for administering the funds and all the paperwork of handling the financing. So yeah, I think we got a pretty good interest rate. And I think right now it might be more favorable than then, but we'd just like to get on the list, and we'll explore this as we're going through design. We'll be back with more information on this, and let's refine the scope and get a realistic estimate.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Is there a motion?
Second.
Moved by Councilman Vilhauer, second by Councilman Lallam, to recommend authorizing the mayor to sign the application and any other required documents to put this on the state water plan. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Item number 7 is old business. Is there any? Is there any new business? Number 8. None. Okay, there is no need to go into executive session right now, so I'll look for a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councilman Solom, second by Councilman Y. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed signify by saying nay. We are adjourned.